My name is Eliza Morgan. I am 34 years old, and until recently I believed I had a perfect marriage. Last weekend, everything I thought I knew about my life fell apart in the worst possible way. It happened in front of everyone. Friends, family, people who had known us for years. We were celebrating our anniversary when a woman walked into the room and called me the other woman. At first I thought it was some kind of sick joke, but then she said my husband's name. And that's when the room went completely silent. But before I tell you what happened next, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you're watching from. Because what happened that night changed everything. The music stopped first. Not all at once. Just faded. Like someone had slowly turned the volume down without anyone noticing. Glasses were still in people's hands. Conversations hung unfinished in the air. And every single person in that room turned to look at her. She was standing near the entrance. Calm. Composed. Like she had every right to be there. I remember tightening my grip on the champagne glass in my hand, because something about the way she said it didn't feel like a mistake. It felt deliberate. "Excuse me," I said, forcing a small laugh. "I think you have the wrong." "No," she interrupted. Her voice was steady, almost rehearsed. "I don't." And then she looked straight at my husband, Daniel, the man I had been married to for 5 years. The man who, just minutes ago, had his arm around my waist while we smiled for photos. The man who now wasn't smiling at all. His face had gone completely still. And that's when my stomach dropped. Because I had never seen that expression before. Not confusion. Not anger. Recognition. But I didn't understand it. Not yet. "You're joking, right?" one of Daniel's friends said nervously from across the room. A few people laughed. Short. Uncomfortable. Waiting for someone to break the tension. But no one did. The woman stepped forward slowly, heels clicking against the floor. Each step louder than it should have been. "I'm not here to cause a scene," she said, which somehow made everything worse. "Then what are you here for?" Daniel finally asked. His voice was low. Controlled. Too controlled. And that's when she said something that made the air feel like it disappeared from the room. "I'm here because I'm his wife." Silence. Not the kind where people whisper. The kind where no one breathes. I blinked. Once. Twice. Waiting for it to make sense. But it didn't. 'Cause I was standing right there. I was his wife. Or at least, I thought I was. Someone behind me dropped a glass. It shattered against the floor, but no one even looked. All eyes were on Daniel now. Waiting. Expecting him to laugh it off. To correct her. To say something. Anything. But he didn't. And that was the moment everything started to crack. "Daniel," I said quietly. He didn't look at me right away. He was staring at her. Like he was trying to figure out how much she knew. And that's when something cold settled in my chest. Because suddenly, this didn't feel like a misunderstanding anymore. The woman reached into her bag. Slowly. Deliberately. And pulled out her phone. "I didn't want it to happen like this," she said softly. "But I guess you didn't leave me a choice." My heart started pounding. Not fast. Heavy. Like each beat carried weight. "What are you doing?" Daniel asked. And for the first time, there was panic in his voice. Small. But there. She ignored him. Instead, she turned the screen toward the room. "I think everyone deserves to see the truth." A few people stepped closer. Curious. Hesitant. And then the whispers started. Low. Sharp. Confused. Because whatever was on that screen, it wasn't simple. I couldn't see it yet. Not clearly. But I could see the reactions. Eyes widening. Brows furrowing. People looking from the phone to me. And back again. And that's when someone said it. "Oh my God." My fingers tightened around the glass. "Can someone just tell me what's going on?" I asked. But no one answered. They were all looking at me differently now. And I hated that look. Because I had seen it before. Just never directed at me. The woman finally looked at me again. Not angry. Not emotional. Just certain. "You really didn't know, did you?" she said quietly. And something about the way she said it made my chest tighten. Because it didn't sound like an accusation. It sounded like pity. But I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because deep down, A small part of me was starting to realize something was very, very wrong. And I still didn't know the truth. Not yet. But I was about to. Daniel finally turned to me. And for a second, I thought he was going to deny everything. Explain it. Laugh it off. Tell everyone this was some kind of misunderstanding. But he didn't. Eliza, he started. And then stopped. Just that one word was enough. Because in 5 years of marriage I had learned something about him. Daniel only hesitated when he was hiding something. The room felt smaller. Like the walls were closing in. What is she talking about? I asked. My voice came out calm. Too calm. And that seemed to make him even more uncomfortable. It's complicated, he said quietly. Complicated. I almost laughed. Because there was nothing complicated about a woman walking into your anniversary party and calling herself your husband's wife. You should tell her, the woman said softly. Still calm. Still composed. Like she had already accepted whatever was about to happen next. Daniel closed his eyes for a brief second. And when he opened them, everything changed. I was going to, he said. Just not like this. The words landed heavily in the room. And suddenly the whispers weren't quiet anymore. They were growing. Spreading. What does that mean? Someone asked from behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Because I was staring at Daniel. Waiting for him to fix this. But instead he looked at her. Not me. Her. And that was when something inside me snapped into place. Because whatever this was, it wasn't new. It wasn't a mistake. It was something he had been living with. Hiding. For a long time. How long? I asked. The question came out before I could stop it. Daniel hesitated again. But this time, the woman answered. 7 years, she said. The number hit me like a physical force. 7. I had been married to him for 5. Which meant no. I shook my head slightly. Because my mind was trying to catch up. And failing. That's not possible, I said under my breath. But she was already walking closer. Slow. Careful steps. Like she didn't want to scare me. My name is Vanessa, she said gently. And I've been married to Daniel for 7 years. The room erupted again. Louder this time. Because now it wasn't just suspicion. It was confirmation. I felt every pair of eyes on me. Waiting to see how I would react. Waiting for me to break. Cry. Scream. Do something. But I didn't. Because something else was happening instead. Something quieter. Colder. Pieces were starting to connect. Small things. Moments I had ignored. Late work nights. Trips that didn't quite make sense. Phone calls he used to take in another room. At the time, they felt like nothing. Now, they felt like everything. I can prove it, Vanessa added. And just like that, everyone leaned in again. Because the truth wasn't fully out yet. Not completely. And people wanted more. They always do. She turned her phone again. This time directly toward me. My heart slowed. Not racing anymore. Just heavy. Steady. Because I already knew whatever I was about to see was going to change everything. Photos. Documents. A marriage certificate. Her name. His name. A date. 7 years ago. Before I even met him. But that wasn't the worst part. Not even close. Because as I stared at the screen, I noticed something else. Something small. But impossible to ignore. The address. It was familiar. Too familiar. Because it wasn't just any address. It was the house Daniel had told me he used to own. Before we got married. The one he said he sold. Except, he hadn't. A quiet realization started forming in my mind. And for the first time that night, I felt something shift. Not panic. Not fear. Something else. Control. Because suddenly, this story wasn't as simple as she thought it was. And Daniel knew it too. I looked up slowly. Met his eyes. And this time, I smiled. Just slightly. Confident. Calm. And that's when both of them froze. Because that wasn't the reaction they were expecting. You're right, I said quietly. The room went still again. Vanessa frowned. Daniel stiffened. You are his wife, I continued. A few people gasped. Others looked completely confused. Because it sounded like I was admitting defeat. Like I had just accepted everything. But I hadn't. Not even close. I took a slow step forward, closer to both of them, and lowered my voice just enough to pull everyone in. But you're not the only one who can prove things. Daniel's face lost color instantly. Vanessa's expression shifted, just slightly, and there it was. That crack. That tiny moment of doubt. Because what they didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that 3 days before this night, I had already discovered something neither of them saw coming, and I had been waiting, patiently, for the right moment. I glanced toward the large TV mounted on the wall, then back at Daniel. Since we're sharing the truth, I said calmly, why don't we show everyone everything? For a second, no one moved. Not Daniel. Not Vanessa. Not even the guests. It was like the entire room was waiting to see if I was bluffing. I wasn't. Daniel took a small step toward me. Eliza, don't do this, he said quietly. And that was all I needed to hear. 'Cause that tone, that wasn't concern. That was fear. Real fear. And suddenly I knew exactly where I stood. Do what? I asked, tilting my head slightly. Tell the truth. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Vanessa looked between us, confused now. Because something had changed. The balance had shifted. You've said enough, Daniel added, his voice tighter this time. But I just smiled. That same calm, steady smile. No, I said softly. I really haven't. I walked past him. Slowly. Deliberately. Every step echoing just enough to keep everyone's attention locked on me. The remote was sitting on the table near the TV. Right where we had left it earlier for the anniversary slideshow. Funny how things work out. Picked it up. Turned toward the screen. And for a brief second, I just stood there, letting the silence stretch. 'Cause moments like this, they matter. They pull people in. Make them lean closer. Make them need to know what happens next. Behind me, I could feel Daniel's eyes burning into me. Vanessa hadn't moved. She was still holding her phone. But now her confidence was gone, replaced with something else. Uncertainty. 3 days ago, I began calmly. I got a message. No one interrupted. No one dared to. It wasn't from either of you, I continued. But it mentioned both of you. Daniel inhaled sharply behind me. I heard it. Everyone did. And at first, I said, pressing the power button on the remote, I thought it was a mistake. The screen flickered on. A blank glow filling the room. But then I started reading. I turned slightly, just enough to see their faces. And I realized something. Vanessa stepped forward. What message? She asked. Her voice wasn't steady anymore. I didn't answer her. Not yet. Because timing is everything. Instead, I clicked a button. And the screen changed. A simple email. Nothing dramatic. No bold headlines. Just text. But the moment it appeared, Daniel froze. Completely. Because he recognized it. Maybe you should read it, I said softly. No one spoke. So I did. Out loud. If you're reading this, I began, then you deserve to know the truth about Daniel Morgan. The room went dead silent. Even the air felt heavier. He didn't just lie to one of you. I paused. Just long enough. He lied to both. Vanessa's face changed instantly. Confusion. Then disbelief. What does that mean? She whispered. But I kept reading. 'Cause now, no one could stop me. Daniel has been running the same story for years. My voice stayed calm. Even. Controlled. 2 marriages. 2 lives. Same lies. A ripple moved through the room. Shock spreading from one person to the next. I could feel it. Hear it. Daniel finally spoke. This is ridiculous, he said quickly. Someone's trying to mess with us. Is that what you want to go with? I cut in, turning toward him. 'Cause now, I wasn't smiling anymore. And for the first time that night, he looked small, cornered. Because we can keep going, I added quietly. I clicked again. The screen changed. Photos this time. Different places. Different dates. But the same man. Daniel. With different women. Not just me. Not just Vanessa. Others. The room erupted. Gasps. Whispers. Someone actually stepped back like they'd seen something dangerous. Vanessa shook her head slowly. No, her voice broke. No, that's not. But it was. She could see it. Everyone could. Daniel tried to step forward. Eliza, stop. But I didn't. I pressed one more button. And this time, the final piece appeared. A document. Clean. Official. Undeniable. Multiple marriage records. Different states. Different dates. Same name. Daniel Morgan. The room went completely still again. But this time, it wasn't confusion. It was clarity. Vanessa stumbled back slightly, her phone slipping from her hand. You said. I was the only one, she whispered. Daniel didn't answer. Because there was nothing left to say. I took a slow breath. Let it out. And finally, I looked at both of them. You walked in here thinking I was the other woman, I said quietly. My voice steady. Controlled. But the truth is, I paused. Just long enough for it to land. We both were. The words hit harder than anything else that night. Because they didn't just expose him. They rewrote everything. Vanessa's expression collapsed completely. Shock turning into something deeper. Betrayal. Real betrayal. Daniel opened his mouth. But no sound came out. For the first time. He had nothing left. And the room knew it. Everyone knew it. I set the remote down slowly. The silence stretched again. But this time, it felt different. Lighter. Like something heavy had finally been lifted. After a moment, someone near the back whispered, "Oh my God." And that was it. That was the moment everything ended for him. Not with shouting. Not with chaos. But with the truth. Sitting right there in front of everyone. No one defended him. Not a single person. And somehow, that silence was louder than anything else that night. Vanessa sank into the nearest chair like her legs couldn't hold her anymore. Her hands were trembling. Her eyes locked on the screen. Like if she kept staring long enough it might change. It didn't. Daniel looked around the room. Desperate. Searching for something, anything that could pull him out of this. But there was nothing left. No excuses. No explanations. Just evidence. Clear. Cold. Final. This isn't what it looks like, he said finally. But even he didn't sound convinced. And that was the worst part. Because when someone lies, you can usually hear it. In their voice. In their tone. In the way they try too hard to make it sound real. But Daniel? He sounded tired. Like he already knew the truth had won. I tilted my head slightly. Then what does it look like? I asked calmly. He didn't answer. Because there was no version of this. That didn't end the same way. Vanessa let out a shaky breath. You told me she was crazy, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I never said that, Daniel replied quickly. But it was too fast. Too defensive. And she noticed. I asked you about her, Vanessa continued, her voice rising slightly now. You said she was someone from your past. That it was over. I closed my eyes for a brief second. 'Cause that part hurt. Not the betrayal. Not even the lies. But how easily he rewrote me. Reduced 5 years of my life. To something disposable. I asked you if there was anyone else, she added. And you said no. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. Frustrated now. Cornered. I was going to fix it, he said. I just needed time. Time. That word again. I let out a small breath. You had years, I said quietly. And for the first time, my voice wasn't completely steady. Just slightly. Just enough for him to hear it. But I didn't let it linger. Because I wasn't going to fall apart here. Not in front of him. Not anymore. One of Daniel's friends stepped forward. Man, is any of this even real? He asked, gesturing toward the screen. Daniel didn't respond. Because he couldn't. And that answer was enough. Vanessa slowly stood up. Her movements unsteady. But her eyes. Clear. Focused. Different now. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking at him. You lied to both of us, she said. No emotion. Just fact. Daniel took a step toward her. Vanessa, listen. She stepped back immediately. Don't, she said sharply. And that one word cut deeper than anything else. Because it wasn't anger. It was final. The kind of final that doesn't leave room for repair. The kind that closes doors. Permanently. I watched them for a moment, the two of them, standing there in the middle of what used to be my life. And strangely, I didn't feel what I expected to feel. No rage. No overwhelming sadness. Just clarity. Like everything had finally snapped into focus. Like all the confusion, all the doubt, had burned away, leaving only the truth behind. And the truth was simple. He didn't lose me tonight. He never really had me. Not honestly. Not completely. And that realization set me free in a way I didn't expect. I reached for my ring. Slowly. Carefully. The metal felt heavier than it should have. Like it carried all the weight of the past 5 years. I slid it off my finger. And for a second, I just looked at it. Then I placed it on the table beside the cake. Right where we were supposed to celebrate. Daniel noticed immediately. Eliza. But I shook my head gently. No, I said. And this time, my voice was completely steady. There's nothing left to say. The room stayed quiet. No one interrupted. No one tried to stop me. Because they understood. This wasn't a moment that needed noise. It needed truth. And closure. I picked up my bag. Turned toward the door. And for the first time that night, I didn't look back. But just as I reached the hallway, I heard footsteps behind me. Fast. Uncertain. Eliza, wait. I stopped. Not because I wanted to, but because something told me this wasn't over yet. I turned slightly. Vanessa was standing there. A few feet away. Her expression softer now. Not the same woman who walked into that room earlier. Not confident. Not composed. Just human. I didn't know, she said quietly. I swear, I didn't know about you. I studied her for a moment, and I believed her. Because the truth has a certain weight to it. And she was carrying it now. Just like I was. I know, I said. And for a second, we just stood there. Two strangers. Connected by the same lie. Then she nodded. A small understanding nod. And stepped back. That was all. No drama. No more words. Just acceptance. I walked out of the house after that. The air outside felt different. Cooler. Lighter. Like I could finally breathe again. Behind me, I could still hear faint voices. Whispers. The sound of something collapsing. But I didn't turn around. Because that chapter was over. Completely. And as I stepped into the night, I realized something I hadn't expected. That night wasn't the moment my life fell apart. It was the moment it finally made sense. The street was quiet. Almost too quiet. Like the world outside had no idea what had just happened inside that house. I stood there for a moment. Just breathing. Letting everything settle. Because for the first time in a long time, there was nothing left to figure out. No questions. No doubts. Just truth. And somehow, that felt lighter than everything I had been carrying before. I started walking. Slow at first. Not really thinking about where I was going. Just moving forward. My phone buzzed in my hand. Once. Then again. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Daniel. Of course. I let it ring. Then stop. Then ring again. But I didn't answer. Because whatever he had to say now, it didn't matter anymore. A few seconds later a message came through. Then another. And another. I glanced down finally. Just once. Please talk to me. It's not what you think. I can explain everything. I almost smiled. Because that line, it's not what you think, after everything that had just happened, didn't even make sense anymore. I locked my phone and slipped it into my bag. Silence again. Real silence. And for the first time that night, it felt peaceful. The next morning, everything felt different. Not dramatic. Not chaotic. Just clear. Like waking up after a storm and realizing the sky had already started to settle. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee I hadn't touched. The house felt unfamiliar now. Not because anything had changed, but because I had. Every memory in that space. Every laugh. Every quiet moment. Every promise. It all felt distant. Like it belonged to someone else. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Daniel. It was an unknown number. I hesitated for a second, then answered. Eliza. It was Vanessa. Her voice was calmer now. Tired but steady. Yeah, I replied quietly. There was a pause on the other end, like she wasn't sure where to start. I left last night, she said. I packed some things and went to my sister's place. I nodded instinctively, even though she couldn't see me. He tried to follow me, she added. But I didn't let him. There was something in her tone now. Not anger. Not sadness. Resolve. He's been calling me nonstop too, she said. Messages. Excuses. Different stories. I let out a small breath. Same, I said. Another pause. But this one felt different. Less heavy. More understanding. I went through everything again this morning, she continued. His accounts. Emails. Old messages. My grip on the phone tightened slightly. And? I asked. You were right, she said. Her voice dropped just a little. There were others. Even though I already knew, hearing it out loud still landed. Still carried weight. Different cities, she went on. Different timelines. She let out a quiet, almost disbelieving breath. I don't even think we know the full number. I leaned back in my chair, staring at nothing. 'Cause somehow, that was the final piece. Not just what he did to us, but how long he had been doing it. How practiced he was. How normal it had become for him. He's not sorry, Vanessa said suddenly. The words were sharp, clear. He's just sorry he got caught. I closed my eyes for a moment, 'cause that was the truth. And sometimes the truth doesn't hurt because it's shocking. It hurts because it's simple. What are you going to do? She asked. I looked around the house one more time, at everything that used to mean something. Then I stood up, walked to the window, and let the light hit my face. I'm leaving, I said. Not rushed, not emotional, just decided. There was a quiet pause. Then, yeah, she said softly. Me too. And in that moment, something strange happened. Something I didn't expect. There was no rivalry, no resentment, no blame. Just two people who had been lied to in the same way, finally choosing something different, something better. Take care of yourself, she said. You too, I replied. And then the call ended. A week later, I was gone. New place, new space, new start. The silence there felt different. Not empty, peaceful, intentional. Daniel had stopped calling by then. Not because he didn't want to, but because there was nothing left to reach. No connection, no control, no version of the story where he could fix this. And as I stood in my new apartment, looking out at a city that didn't know me, didn't know my past, didn't know what I had just walked away from, I realized something. I was never the other woman. Not really. I was someone who believed in something real, and walked away the moment I saw it wasn't. And that wasn't weakness. That was the strongest thing I had ever done.